Round 1 in the books. What do you guys think? It's Dax Hill season. Let's go! What is up, Bengals fans? It's your boy Mike coming back at you. Just a quick wrap-up episode for Round 1, which happened last night. If you stayed up super late, I'm on the West Coast, so it wasn't that late for me, but if you're on the East Coast, I think that thing wrapped up. It got done before midnight, so there's that, I guess. But lots of crazy stuff happened in the first round, lots of trades. Bengals did what I expected they would do. They sat put at 31, let all that stuff happen in front of them, and took the best player available. And don't get it twisted, there were about 5 or 6 players I had on my board that I would have considered a BPA style pick. Dax Hill is kind of universally you're going to struggle to go online and find a bad scouting report on Dax Hill because he is that good. And I give it a solid B. And the reason I give it a solid B is mostly because I think that the Bengals were really, really hoping that George Karlaftis was going to fall, and he got taken, I think, right in front of them. I think they were waiting on him to fall, but they had a solid backup plan with Dax Hill in case that didn't happen. It almost did. I think they would have loved Karlaftis for 2 reasons. He gives a good edge. He plays a really strong, solid, sturdy edge, which is the kind of edge player they like. And he also has the versatility and athleticism to potentially kick inside and rush from the 3-tech position, although he doesn't show a lot of 3-tech on film because he was used primarily off the edge for Purdue. But that's neither here nor there. The Bengals pick up a super athletic safety in Daxton Hill. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. So this is kind of I preferred, and you guys know on the channel if you've seen any of my mock drafts, I have told you that safety is definitely on the an option at 31, and I think the Bengals thought that too. The only issue is usually I would be taking Lewis Cine out of Georgia here, and the only reason I did is because, number one, I think the main thing that they need out of a safety is the potential to take Jesse Bates' spot if they're not able to extend him after he plays on the franchise tag this year. So I think that really I think Lewis Cine is a more pure free safety, and that's really the only reason I had him over Daxton Hill. Daxton Hill is just as athletic, just as fast. He's got a freaky arm length and wingspan. He has a 6'7" wingspan. He's 6 foot tall, but his wingspan is that of a 6'7" guy. So he's really rangy. He's quick. He's got really fluid hips. And this guy's kind of a Swiss Army knife. So I think what happened here is the Bengals looked last year and realized, man, we were crazy lucky last year in the secondary with injuries. All of their secondary players essentially played the full season. A couple guys missed a couple games here or there, but there were no big injuries that took guys off the field for their Super Bowl run. I think that in their mind, they're saying, that's probably not going to happen again. We're probably going to have to deal with injuries in the secondary, whether it be Von Bell or Jesse Bates or one of the corners getting hurt. And what Daxton Hill does, he's so versatile that he makes that not as big a deal. Essentially, I don't think they're going to rely on him to be a day one starter, but he will see the field in 3 safety sets because Lou Anarumo loves running some 3s. I think he ran like 200 plus or so snaps of 3 safety looks last year. That's not a lot percentage-wise when you look at like the entire season worth of defensive snaps. But that's enough, and also I think they were successful enough with it that I think he wants to do more of it. And I think if last year he had a guy like Dax Hill on the roster, they would have done more 3 safety looks. So I think this pick signals that. If you're looking for like what does this mean for the Bengals defense, I think that what this means is that they've got their kind of Tyrann Mathieu light. He doesn't play like Tyrann Mathieu as much. I think he has a higher potential ceiling as a cover guy than Tyrann Mathieu does, but he flashes some Tyrann Mathieu instincts. So they've got their kind of Swiss Army knife that if he can play deep safety if Jesse Bates goes down, he can, or they're not able to re-sign him. He can step into the slot and play some slot corner. He can play in the box as a box safety. He can cover tight ends really well, right? Which is something they really covet because they got roasted by tight ends several times last year. He can even, in a pinch, step outside and play some press man corner for you. Now, I wouldn't do that a lot, and he shouldn't have to do that a lot as long as Awuzie and Apple stay on the field. Those are their press man corners. And don't get it twisted, guys. Sitting on the board was Kyler Gordon and Andrew Booth. Neither one of those guys, if they had drafted, if the Bengals had drafted them, neither one of those guys were gonna be taking Eli Apple's spot. Eli Apple is their number 2 corner, their second outside corner across from Awuzie next year, and this draft wasn't going to change that. The only thing that may change that would be if they were able to go get like a James Bradbury or something like this and trade for him. Let's take a look actually at what's left on the board. Just really quickly, if you guys didn't know, PFF has their mock draft simulator now has an option where you can say populate the first round picks with real picks, right? So we can just start at the top of the second round. It'll pre-populate the picks before. You can see here Daxton Hill and then Lewis Seen. So if you take a look at the draft board here, this is from the Locked On Bengals guys. So Jake Lisco, Joe Goodberry helps with this, James Rapine. I think Bengals Sands, who you guys know from the channel, also helps with this. They get a lot of input from the community, but they have their system of grading players. This is their best available board. So if you take a look, the guys in yellow here, the guys with the yellow highlights are guys that have visited with the Bengals. So if we take a look at kind of what's available here and kind of what the Bengals may do in the second round, I've told you guys since my first mock draft, I think the Bengals are going defense rounds 1 and 2. So if we take a look at this and going on that, you can expect, I don't think you can expect any of these any guys ranked in the top 30 or so. Not going to be there, obviously. But if you go down there are some options here. I mean, I think best case scenario for the Bengals is Travis Jones maybe still being there, or Logan Hall. I don't think either of those guys. I think they'll both get picked before the Bengals pick. But if you take a look, maybe Martin Emerson slides down, and they're able to get 2 secondary players back to back. Martin Emerson is a really solid. He's young. He meets a lot of. You can see here the Locked On Bengals guys gave him an 80.1 score. That's a really interesting pick. You could also look. I'm not a big fan of DeMarvin Leal, but Roger McCreary maybe still be there. Cam Taylor-Britt maybe will still be there. But I think that we're looking at Andrew, and you can see Andrew Booth Jr. maybe still being there. I think that the board, more than likely for the Bengals, I think what they want to happen, I think they want the board to fall. I think they want the board to fall so that they can draft a corner or a defensive tackle. But if one of these really good edge players fall, I think they could take it. And I think that's been the strategy I've been telling you guys this whole time. The Bengals don't see their roster. Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo, Duke Tobin, they don't see this roster as needing any starters. They're not drafting guys to take starting roles. They're drafting the way good teams do, which is for the future. That's what the draft is for. Not to draft guys to come in and fill in plug holes, right? So the Bengals don't have a whole lot of holes in their roster, despite what you see some Bengals fans freaking out about on social media. But let's run this mock draft simulator and see what PFF thinks will be available on the board when the Bengals pick at 63. So take a look here. I think Kingsley Enagbare is an interesting option here, and if you take a look at the board, Kingsley Enagbare would be, what do they have him graded? They have him graded at 77.7. He's 22 and a half years old. That would be a really interesting pick for the Bengals. I think that they may consider taking Enagbare in this spot. But if you take a look here, I do think they like Cam Taylor-Britt. I am a fan of Marcus Jones. I just think the second round's a little too high for Marcus Jones. They're not going to take either of these safeties. They just took a safety. It'd be really... Actually, you know what? Both of the safeties on their roster right now are on the final year of a deal. So Bates on a franchise tag. Von Bell in the last year of his deal. So maybe I guess they could take... they could end up taking another safety, but I think it's more likely if they take a defensive back, it's going to be a corner. Cam Jurgens, I think, is a dark horse here to maybe compete for the interior offensive line spot that's available. Also, Sean Ryan's a potential for that. But if I had to make my best guess here, I really think they don't typically address the defensive line until the mid round. So starting in round 3, going to about round 5 or 6, I think that they will either go. I think the odds here are either corner or if they go offense, it'll be offensive line. One of those two guys, or one of those two things. Dark horse being a wide receiver if somebody falls, right? So if you can look at the board here in PFF's mock, Josh Paschal and Logan Hall, I think, would both be guys that the Bengals are interested in. Well, actually, I know they're interested in Logan Hall. But Nick Bonito goes right here. So they've got some guys that could potentially fall if teams aren't in love with the guys on the board. So I think for me, I would go like Marcus Jones is interesting because he has really good kick return ability, but Marcus Jones is also like almost 24 years old, right? So I think what I would end up doing here, I think my prediction, they also really like Tariq Woolen, I think, honestly. He's 6'4", he's really big. I'm not signed into PFF, so they're not showing me the grades, but could be a project corner here that he can take this year to learn behind Awuzie and Apple. But for my money, I'd rather have them take a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt. Let's go ahead and take him. We'll see how it goes, man. But really what I'm trying to tell you guys is, A, Dax Hill is a really good pick. B, I think that he's a good pick because he's super versatile, he's super athletic, he's young, and he's got crazy long arms. He's very rangy. He's instinctual. He knows how to play zone. He's a very strong zone safety player, and you can put him at any spot in the zone on the field, and he'll excel. There are reps on tape. If you go watch him play against Penn State, he has several reps where he's covering Jahan Dotson, a first-round wide receiver, who is really shifty, really quick, and hard to stay with. He covered him in multiple different defensive looks. In zone coverage, he even had some press man looks on the outside, guarding against deep routes. And Jahan Dotson got him a couple times, but that's a first-round wide receiver. He should get his yards, right, in the college game. So Dax Hill, really solid, going to be very versatile for this team. I think they go defense again in the second round, and then in the third round they start to open it up to maybe some offensive players, offensive line specifically, maybe defensive line as well. But this is going to be a defense-heavy draft, just like I've been telling you guys, because this offense is already cooking and they're ready to go. But I'm excited to see what happens next, guys. It's going to be a fun draft weekend. You guys stay safe out there, and until next time, Bengals fans, I've been Mike. This has been Who Daily. See ya.